Hi, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to have you all back on this amazing journey which we are doing on looking at various practices, working on sustainable practices. Today we have Shruti Vedavyas. Shruti, a small brief about your journey as a student of architecture.
Absolutely. So I'm an architect from BMS College, and I remember in one of our semesters where I think architecture was so fascinating, and I thought it was all about building lovely, pretty-looking buildings and things like that. I remember the Jason sir had walked into our classroom, and everything he said was everything that I had never thought of when it came to architecture. And I went home that day thinking, "Oh my God, I never thought about it that way." And I decided there and then that if I'm learning, then I'm learning with Sir and no one else. So that journey has been extremely fascinating. A lot of ups, a lot of downs, a lot of learnings, and we tend to take our designs and buildings and projects very emotionally. We tend to invest a lot of emotion in them. So it's been quite a journey. I've learned a lot. Thanks to Sir, he's mentored me with a lot of patience.
A little bit more about your education, your architecture journey, student journey.
That's my student journey. Architectural journey, yes, we have had a lot of interesting projects that have come up. And I think one of the most interesting ones was this farmhouse that we're going to talk about. All credits to the client also, Mr. Krishnagowda, because he was completely 100% hands-on with us during this journey. Never once did he express doubt about our capability to kind of execute this project or in any of our ideas. In fact, he was as much a team member as anybody else, experimenting with us, exploring with us, and encouraging us even at times when we thought this isn't going to work. So that was, I think, a big plus. And of course, I don't even need to tell you about Sir's magnificent input. That is
Right.
understood. So
Uh, I, I strongly remember the first day I was at the office, and I was given a small sheet of paper and asked to do a huge 1 lakh square feet of model out of it. So you know how Sir works. So how was your first day at Jaisim Fountain?
my first day was, I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. I think on my first day, for whatever reason, Sir wasn't in a very good mood. And I don't know if he knew it was my first day, but he said, go to Basangudi Club and get the elevation done and come. I was like, Basangudi, I didn't even know where it is. I didn't know what I was supposed to do, but I was too scared to ask him anything else. So it was a completely fascinating but terrifying first day. And then second day onwards, it was okay. I had like the support of all the other people there, and they said, okay, this is Basangudi Club. You have to go there. You have to do this, that sort of thing. But it was very awe-inspiring.
Yeah,
Every
right.
day I used to come to work thinking, okay, what is it today?
Mhm.
So it was like that.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And
Yeah.
it's been how long since you've been since that first day?
Since that first day, it has been 13 years.
Awesome. I think one of the longest team members of Dyson Foundation, 13 years of I'm sure an amazing journey of self exploration
Absolutely.
too.
I would.
Did
Absolutely.
it change you personally?
Yes, it did. Because I think what I found was as I started working more and more, because I spent so much of time with Sir, and I think I'm probably one of the youngest people to have spent so much of time with him, how he thought about buildings rubbed off, and how you look at things in life objectively, subjectively, what kind of situations do you create for yourself, in terms of what kind of spaces do you create for yourself. It's kind of a mirror. How you react to projects and spaces ends up becoming a sort of parallel to how you react to your own situations in life. So that way, yes, I did learn a lot, and sometimes it does influence a lot of decisions that I take in my personal life also. So I don't think it's possible to separate the journey of the architect from the person. And I'm sure like most of the architects agree with me on this. It's too intermingled and intertwined.
Right, right, right. Amazing. So, other than Bunny, which one really influenced you a lot?
Other than that, there were quite a few projects. Some that we worked days and nights on, nights especially. One of them was Mr. Vittalmurthy's residence in JP Nagar. That was a huge challenge because we had to surpass what we had already done for them. It wasn't a blank slate. We had already built a building for them. And once the building was done, it couldn't be less than the building that we had built before. So that was a challenge. That was a huge challenge. And their requirements had changed. Their way of life had changed over the last 20 years. But having built something and then see that taken down and you have to build on the same site again, that's like you challenging yourself.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
Over to you, Sati. You can start sharing.
Okay, great. So today I think we'll go through this journey of how Banni started, how it evolved, and what it finally is today, still evolving with the family that is living there, Mr. Krishnagowda's family. I think through the theme of the entire thing, form and exploration is something that ties this entire project together. At each stage, we explored what it means. We went back to the basics. We explored what form means, what we think of conventional things like doors, windows, rooms. We went back and we questioned why we do things the way we do them. We had a very lovely setting, and that sort of seemed to demand that we do something more with it. So just a brief fact file. This house was for Mr. Krishnagowda and his family, his wife and his lovely daughter. He also has parents, and her parents will sometimes visit and stay with them along with relatives. Um, the total area of this building is about 5,100 square feet. And the cost is, I'm sure, shocking because it was quite economical, about 95 lakhs along with interiors that we did. Mr. Krishnagowda is actually very active in the local Communist Party, and he's an avid agriculturalist, and his wife teaches in the local school. So they came with a set of requirements where they wanted the elders of the family to feel comfortable, to feel happy in the home, as well as the youngest member of the family. So it had to be a space that accommodated people through all ages. And one of the main things that they had as an idea was the building had to be in context with the nature and the land that it sat on. It had to respond to that particular context. They wanted it to be different, to be unique, but at the same time, they wanted it to be very respectful to the land and very integrated with the land that it was going to be built on. So these were some of the initial sketches by Jaisim sir, of course, where we see the land and we see something very organic taking shape. We were trying to, all the green that you see is the greenery that finally got translated on the land. We were trying to integrate the built space, the unbuilt space, and the greenery in between. This was a little later when we started defining spaces, bathrooms, bedrooms, the actual names and physicalities of spaces. So this was the original piece of land that we had to build on. And this wasn't the original site that we were going to build on. But when we did go to site, Jaisim sir saw this piece of land and he said, why not this? It offers you beautiful views from everywhere. It's inviting, and yet it's not exactly on the main road. It doesn't, it doesn't assault you. Yet it invites you quietly in, and it lets you explore the form and the building. Some initial pictures of how the site was. While the site itself was fairly flat and it had small mounds and little undulation, there wasn't very heavy, dense greenery around. There was very light, pleasant greenery that stretched for acres together. It was fairly good soil, little gravel here and there, but apart from that, it was pretty good soil. So, just a little quick fact about the site. The home sat on a piece of on a parcel of land that was approximately about 70 feet in dia. There's a glimpse of some rolling hills that you could spot on the way to the site, just a glimpse. This entire project is near the town of Malvalli. It's in a place called Talagawadi. So taking you through the site plan, if you can see, the entire thing has evolved very organically. You don't find that you don't find definitions of what we consider as rooms, 10 by 12, 14 by 16, or whatever. The entire thing is just as nature is. It's a reflection of the nature around it. There's a pathway that leads you to the house, where there is an entrance that leads you to a small transition space here. Once you are in this transition space, you can make a choice. You either go downstairs to the more public spaces that are the living area, the kitchen, the dining, the pond, and the little gathering area, or you go upstairs to the more private spaces, the bedrooms and the library. If one decides to move up from the foyer this way, there is the daughter's bedroom, two bathrooms, and a master bedroom. They share a huge balcony because we believed that the balcony shouldn't really be somewhere we go out and sit and not just a place to have a couple of chairs, but more a place to have activities. You can read there, you can study there, you can do hobbies and crafts there. So it's quite a big one. It's a part of your room for both of them. It's an interconnecting space. There's a little courtyard in the middle that kind of pulls in light from above, as you'll see later, and distributes it to the rest of the house. And the topmost level is the library. So this is both symbolic and physical, knowledge being at the uppermost space of any being. If one decides to go down from the foyer, then they get the public spaces, which is this living area. There's a little courtyard area that can be accessed from there. The kitchen, the dining. This pond is a rainwater collection pond. There is a perforated wall come roof on top of it that lets rain in, but it doesn't, it's not too much either. So that pond collects it all. There's also a little multi-purpose hall, since they had a lot of activities that involved gatherings of people, sometimes 25, sometimes 50, and we wanted to have a little hall that took care of all of that, whether it was social meetings or business meetings or party meetings. Onto the side, we initially designed a store with a bathroom that could be accessed from this area. But while we were building, the space turned out to be so beautiful that it's now converted into a guest house. As we started construction, one of the first things that we did was to make sure that we waterproofed the area. This was a structure that was both framed and load-bearing. And before any of that happened, we did a base preparation. A very simple, clean, and elegant way of waterproofing. We used canal liners and then did a layer of PCC. These canal liners went from the bottom of the structure all the way to the ground and a little above. So even if there was seepage, the water would travel along the liners and get out at ground level, not really getting into the structure. And just after we did this, we profiled the space also. And if you can see, these are the canal liners that have come from the bottom area right to the ground level. And just after we finished it, it rained. So it gave us a really good chance to see how well the system was working, and it worked quite well. Once we profiled the area, it was again all about surface preparation and building it up. The house sat on a large PCC bed. There was reinforcement here and there, but apart from that, we didn't do conventional foundations where we dug 6 feet, 8 feet below. This house didn't require that. As a structure, it sat on the PCC bed itself. The soil was fairly good. And parts of the structure were above ground, parts of the structure were below ground. The amalgamation of that let us work this system out. A majority of the structure, we have used locally available burnt bricks. In some places, we have used them horizontally. In some places, we have used them vertically. We've explored a lot of what could happen with a single brick in terms of masonry, in terms of how they can aid openings, and in terms of how they can add to the visual elements. So we experimented a little here and there. Then came the structure. The central hall has 4 large pillars on which the library sits. This particular piece of this portion of the house is attached and yet not attached to the rest of the house. So this was the base preparation done for the structure, and we erected pipes on these solid, beautiful rocks that were around that area. This was halfway through finishing the structure. As you can see, the MS pipes have been erected. They don't support the roof. I'm not sure if you can see the detail here. They don't support the roof. So at this stage, we had a lot of people coming and asking, why did you put them in the first place if you don't need it for the roof? Is it just for aesthetics? Is it just for fun? Does it have no function? We didn't answer anybody at that point because the best was yet to come. Some more pictures of the structure as it was shaping up. One of the most challenging things about this structure was the centering. As with the plan form and 2D, even the 3D form was very naturally flowing and organic. It reflected the elements around it. It was very difficult to get people to do centering that wasn't on a flat plane or what they were used to conventionally pitched roofs. To do this took a lot of time, a lot of effort, and also a lot of educating the people there. Initially, when they saw the drawings, when they saw the model, most of the people who had volunteered to do the job said it can't be done. But it did take a little time to educate them, to go through it piece by piece logically and tell them how centering could be done. And once that happened, the roof of the structure evolved in such a way that it started at the ground in a place and went all the way 2 floors up. These are some of the pictures. If you can see this picture, that's the lowest point in the roof behind Jason sir there. And that's very, that's about 6-7 feet off the ground. And it's like walking up a rolling hill. That's how the roof structure was. So once the centering was done, we used custom-made pots and custom-made clay vents that would let hot air out from below to do the roof. Some places we used baskets that were made for this project because we needed them to be a particular dia and a particular depth. Everything in this house was designed to detail. We didn't pick up anything that was readily available from the market. It wasn't a mass-produced thing. We calculated, we designed, we sat and came up with all of these. These were made especially for the project. These let in light and took out hot air at the same time. And because we used these filler slabs, the entire place was cooler than what would have been otherwise. Yep, this is steel reinforcement in progress. So this finally led to something as artistic and beautiful as this, which is a combination of art and structure and the utility of how we use different elements as fillers to provide aesthetic as well as thermal comfort. So these are some pictures post de-shuttering where you can really see the profile of the roof. Those little pots that you saw earlier, once the shuttering was removed, this was the play of light that we got. The storehouse, which now has become a guest house, this was also designed to reflect the main house, but then not take away the attention from the main house. So again, undulating forms and very gently rolling hills. Yep, this is the storehouse and the toilet. So after we finished doing the major portion of concreting work and the slabs and the structure itself, the walls and things, the other interesting portions of the house began. The courtyard roof fabrication. If you can make out, the opening starts on one level but ends on another. This was a tough one. We had to have something that spanned not just the width but also in its third dimension. So we began by putting these fabricated pieces together, and it spanned quite a bit, as you can see. It added dimension to the already existing organic roof, which is one of the reasons actually that we didn't want to kind of just make it flat and plain, because that would be completely against the language that was already followed. This was the next step where we took the steel, we took the reinforcement and added a little mass to it. That big an opening and that much of light would have been uncomfortable and would have heated up the space quite a bit. So this was our solution to a play of light, where you could see glimpses of the sky beyond the skylight. At the same time, it wasn't going to be very hot and very glaring below. That as a finished product translated into this and this. So this being the peak, the highest point of this particular area, this has a heat extractor, which means it naturally keeps extracting all the hot air. So along with our thermal slabs, along with our filler slabs and passive interventions like having a heat extractor, we kind of ensured that the house remained pretty cool throughout the year. So as you can see, while you do get glimpses of light and glimpses of the sky above, it isn't overbearing. This was another interesting feature that we followed in the house. This area is the library, and while we wanted the library to look out onto the fields beyond, we also had practical difficulties. The books couldn't get dusty, the books couldn't get wet in the rain. Security here was not an issue as it generally is in urban centers. There wasn't a problem with thieves and people trying to break in and all that. But the problem was more with animals trying to get in and with rain coming in and destroying the books. So leaving it open or just leaving it with a huge overhang was out of the question. Glass was again out of the question. That would have been everybody's first solution to do that. It would have generated a lot of heat and it was quite frankly a lot of maintenance also. So this perforated wall became a very interactive wall with nature. While portions of it remained closed to protect the books, portions of it remained open. Where protection was not needed from the elements, it remained open. And all the rainwater that comes from this particular wall and a little bit of the surrounding areas got collected into the pool below. Again, construction process of the same thing. We have followed a similar principle to the skylight. Yeah, this was the library deck and this was the view beyond, which we wanted to preserve as much as possible. So this portion of the perforated wall remains open with just a mesh. So we're allowed to have very nice rain that comes inside the house and gets collected in this pond. This pond is also a part of a larger rainwater harvesting system. This was the library deck, and everything above the deck was protected from the elements by this perforated wall. Essentially, we had cooler air coming here, passing over water and then rising up. The hot air that would rise up would eventually be extracted by the fan. So in each part of the house, there was a mechanism in place to make sure that it was thermally comfortable and relevant. This is how it looks from the outside. The definition of why walls should end where they do and why roofs should be the way they are is something that I think was really challenged in this project, because this is both a roof and a wall, not just a wall or not just a roof. So like I mentioned before, this project was challenging because we constantly kept trying to rethink what we take for granted, rethink what a wall should be, rethink what a roof should be. Why should rain not come in? Why should rain come in? Why should we not have sunlight? Why should we have sunlight? Basic questions that you kind of take for granted when you're designing stuff. Those questions became some things that had to be addressed constantly here because we looked beyond that in this project. That's how it is. A part of the terrace here. And this is the portion of a roof becoming a wall as it gradually comes down. So carrying forward the same theme of questioning and challenging, we looked at fenestrations, that is doors and windows. Why do we need doors? What are doors? And what are windows? Why do windows need to have shutters? Why do we need to have grills? Do doors really need to have shutters, or are we doing it just because we think doors have to have it? So some basic answers that came out of this line of questioning was that we decided where they need privacy and security in terms of being able to lock the space and not give access, let's have doors. Where they need symbolic entrances, we could do that too. But more than anything else, we decided that each door and each window would not be what is generally thought of as a door and a window. So each of the designs that we did, we first did it on the ground. We kind of tried to see what would work, what wouldn't. We went through a process of exploring the material, the functionality, how the material leads to functionality. Is it conducive to the activity that we're looking at? Is it okay in terms of structure? And then we did the real thing. So there were a lot of cutouts and a lot of templates made even before we went to the real thing. You can see. So this was the final product of the doors. The expression of art happened through the doors also. It lets in a little diffuse light, but lets the viewer see a patch of art. As you can see, this curve follows the language of the rest of the house. It's got a very simple timber frame. I wouldn't even call it a frame, probably just an edging. And we designed everything from the edging to the shutter to how it would close, how would it open. Everyday things like how the lock would work or how a handle should be fit in to doors like these became challenges. So doing detailing in terms of simple things like locks and handles, they actually became some of the biggest challenges, and we kind of went through it successfully. If you can see, these hinges are specifically designed for these doors. These aren't hinges that you could probably go into the market and pick up a set of 3-4 brass hinges or something like that. They're very specifically designed to hold the weight of the door, for the shape of the door, and for security. The same line of questioning continued through the windows. This is one of the ideation sketches from Sir initially. We tend to have grill because we don't want animals to come in, we don't want humans to break through. And there's a mental security factor associated with seeing grill, especially in Indian cities. Here, we could go a little beyond that. The threat of people coming in wasn't so much. The threat of maybe small rodents coming in, definitely yes. The threat of mosquitoes and insects coming in, yes, a lot. But apart from that, we didn't really face any security challenges. So we tried to see if this grill could be relooked at not in MS as we usually do, but in timber. And while being relooked at, could it also be a frame? Could it also not have shutters? Could it hold mesh? So these were the questions that we asked ourselves. And the answers are just coming up. Again, we did some amount of experimentation here. So we finally end up with windows without shutters. We have a visual element which is fixed in glass on either side of the windows. And then this is the ventilation element where we don't have shutters, but we only have double mesh. So even if there is rain, then it doesn't splash in too much. Yeah, that's the final window that is on site today. This is the visual element which is fixed, and this is the ventilation element. A few more pictures of the work in progress. This is one of my favorite pictures because while it shows a beautiful curve form, almost as if an eagle were taking off, it also shows very minor details that are important to us architects. It shows that this column is passing through and through, so this slab has nothing to do with the column except just to say hi. And it shows the kind of detailing that we have worked on for the windows. It shows the different materials that we have used for the roofs. It shows the hot air outlets that we have given. So while it is a composition of different elements and materials, it also shows the minute details that we worked on. Then some of the flooring materials that we used throughout the house. We used kota, we used jaisalmer, we used chapdi, we used timber, red oxide in places. We used planks of timber as well as smaller pieces of timber. And while we did this house, we also realized that conventional furniture isn't something that's going to go well with this house. So as we started designing the house, the furniture was also getting designed. This is one of my favorite parts of the house. We tend to think of cupboards as being something against a wall, something that has to be taken away towards one portion of the room and things like that. What we did here was we kept all the walls completely free of any furniture, and we had a centrally floating bed. Instead of the headboard, we had a huge cupboard that could be accessed from the backside. We were a little bit more adventurous with their daughter's bed. Girls generally have a lot of things to keep around their bedside. Sometimes they have alarm clocks, they have books that they're reading, they have favorite toys, they have earrings that they take off before they sleep, things like that. So instead of designing traditional small side tables and things like that, we decided to go a little more adventurous with that, and we gave her a circular bed. As you can see, again, we have tried to keep all the walls free of furniture. This is a separation though between this space and the other, their dining area. Then we got into a little bit more detailing where we started designing the light fixtures too. While we were doing this, we took a lot of inspiration from nature because it only seemed befitting to do that for this particular project. As the structure had shaped up and as the furniture got moved in, we really saw that it was in very different ways, different representations of nature around it. The bio influence on the design was quite huge. So we decided that even the lighting fixtures should follow the same language. There's no point in having something that doesn't go well with the language and the idea, the central idea behind it. So we designed the lighting fixtures also. So these were like little nests that were going to be hanging from different portions of their house. Glimpse of the house during nighttime, during construction. So since we had a very large roof area, especially since it was a double curve, we had to divert that water somewhere, and the land on which it sat also was quite large. The final system of rainwater harvesting that was done was that we would collect all the water in two places. One was the pond that you saw earlier, which is inside the house, and the other was an underground tank. All the water would be diverted to one of these two places, and a portion of that would be used, and most of the other stuff that was remaining would be used to recharge the groundwater table. So some of the challenges that we faced on this particular project was the comprehension of an organic form. While Krishna Gowda's family and him, they were completely on board with us for the design concept itself, we did have other people coming and asking us, your walls are curved, how are you going to put a sofa in? How are you going to fix a tube light? And somehow this conventional notion that straighter walls are more strong than curved walls had to be dispelled. They asked us, is it strong enough? You're doing a curved roof, will it fall? So these were some of the questions that kept coming to us time and time again throughout the project, whether it was from people who came to visit the site or people who we were discussing this design with. The most common question was, will it fall? Of course, it didn't. But the comprehension of what organic forms can be took some time for the environment to accept, the people environment to accept. Practically marking these organic forms for construction on the ground was a big challenge. While the pencil, the hand, and the paper flow in unison, it wasn't like that when we went to site. To get the curves right, to get the dimensions right, especially when we were doing the roof, because that spanned over planes, to get those markings right was a huge challenge. But what we did eventually was we pieced it. We took it grid by grid. We took like 4 feet grids and we built it grid by grid. We marked it grid by grid. So there were a whole lot of marking drawings for this project. I think more than any other project that we've ever worked on. But eventually we managed to mark it, and there was no issue with that. The other main challenge that we faced was not in terms of construction, but again more in terms of perception, was when we put in MS steel columns into rock bases. So when we did that, again, a lot of people came and asked us, won't the rock shift? Won't the rock fall? Won't the rock crack? Is the pipe going through and through the rock, or is it just going to be sitting on top? And if it's sitting on top, won't the pipe just fall? So it was a process of educating other people also, as much as educating ourselves on how these details could be executed. But once that process of education started becoming a continuous thing for people visiting the site, I think things got better, and people's perceptions also got better. It changed. They were more open to seeing what we were going to do next. They were more open to challenging the convention, and of course, they became willing participants in the building process. The other thing was about laborers working in non-urban centers. We did find it initially. We did have a contractor who did the job, but couldn't sustain it because the logistics wasn't supportive. So halfway through the project, we did have to have people from different parts of Karnataka come in and finish the work. And the challenge of working in such a place is not about stay, food, or anything else, but more about how well the space is accessed, how far it is from local bus stations and train stations and things like that, and how they're used to working in urban centers where everything is available. Even though probably this was a vacation for them, the land was beautiful, the owners took care of them really well, but finding them to work on site was a definite challenge. Educating them was the other thing that came with the package. Most of them were used to doing straight walls, were used to doing a little bit of exposed masonry. This was completely out of completely out of their turf. So that took a little while, and that added quite a bit of time to the project, but it was worth it in the end. It took a little while to educate them about how things stand, about how to do different finishes, how to play around with bricks, what is the process of construction. So we did that too on the site, and definitely they learned that, and then they moved on to evolving their own concepts of building. Like I mentioned before, formwork and shuttering for a double curved roof was an absolute, it was a Herculean challenge for us to do that. I'm sure most of you practicing architects agree that centering itself is a headache, because people, the centering teams are very hard to get and very difficult to work with. Having said that, for them to have done a double curved roof was even more challenging. Luckily, we did find good people to do that. The contractor who was there at the time took care of that. But again, the process of educating them about why this particular centering would not fall as they were doing it was an important task. Skylight fabrication, like I showed in the pictures, was a challenge for welders to work at that height with scaffolding. For them to be able to visualize, understand, and bend each piece of steel so that the entire thing is in cohesion. For us to draw, it's very easy. We use AutoCAD, we draw, and we think it will be done. But to actually execute it was quite difficult. And we had an excellent guy who did a very good job. So that was a little tough to do. What probably would have taken a week to do took about 3-4 weeks there. But again, it was a work of art. At some point, we stopped looking at all of these elements as just construction, and it evolved into being different pieces of art that was coming together for a bigger work. So making the hardware was also a challenge. We went through 4, 5, 6 types of hardware before we found the right hinges for the doors. A lot of credit here goes to the client himself, because like I said earlier, he was on board and he used to get all these templates done as and when we ideated. So it was more of a trial and error where that was concerned, but it did definitely work. If you noticed in all the pictures that I showed you, you could not actually see plumbing and services. One of the main things that we wanted to do was not spoil this, this beautiful building by having pipes running down here and there, by having water pipes, drainage pipes, even rainwater harvesting pipes. So it was very important for us to integrate it within the building and while we were building, and not really as a afterthought that happens with a lot of projects. At some point, we had to kind of ask ourselves, where do you stop? Where do you stop the project? Where do you stop customizing? Where do you stop designing for things? But I think the answer to that was you just don't stop. Even today, if there's something to be designed there, we would like to do it by hand, and we would like to do it especially for that house. From the first brick that was laid to the last light fixture that was fixed, everything in that house was custom designed. It was custom built, and very, very specifically for that family, for that space, and for that environment. So that is something I think we're very proud of, and it has worked well. They're also quite happy with it. So this question did come up though, because a lot of the times we stop at some stage, especially during interiors, and say, okay, let's buy the drapes, let's buy sofas and dining tables that are already available. Not with this house, definitely not with this house. Everything came designed specifically for that and built for that. Some post-occupancy photographs. This area is the foyer area, from where you can either go up to the private spaces or go down to the public spaces. So this is the journey up, which culminates in the library, and you have two rooms on either side of the landing to the left. This is the congregational area. Below ground, as you can see, we've used stone to retain the earth on the other side, and this is our ventilation system on top that you can see here. So when it rains through here, but we do have a collection system along the periphery that will divert the rain to the rainwater harvesting tanks. So the supports used for this particular slab again was rock, locally found. This was a very interactive session with some of the younger architects and students when they went to explore and study the house, but the same space, the multi-purpose space. Elements of traditional living that we have generally seen in the Karnataka region, like having these kattes or having a rough floor where people can just spread out a chape and sit. Those kind of elements were very important in this particular house, because there was something that was a style of living that we wanted to take forward. A lot of the times, the spaces that we build kind of dictates the life that you might lead, the style of life that you might lead. While we did want to have, futuristic and upgraded systems in terms of technology, in terms of other elements of construction, simple things in how they lived, we did not want to change. As one comes down the stairs from the foyer, this is the living area. As you can see, we've built it into the space. We've built the seating into the space, the foyer area. As you go up, this is one bedroom on that side and the other bedroom on this side. So the separation of levels was also quite symbolic. One level was completely for the master bedroom. The space belonged to them, and a little higher was for the daughter. This is the view from the living room, where you can see the collection pond, the rainwater collection pond, a central gathering space. This door to the left leads you into the multi-purpose space that you saw earlier with the stone walls. And this is the library. This structure, this hanging structure, is the library. This leads to the dining area and the kitchen. As you can see, many elements are at play here. You can see the structure of the library. We can see the lightness of access to different floors. We can see the walls with their exposed masonry. The little artwork, the glimpses of artwork that you see throughout the house, either in terms of the light fixtures or in terms of the doors, in terms of what you see on the ceiling, the perforated wall, a couple of more views of the same space. Here you see a glimpse of the skylight, which is above this courtyard area, And as you walk into the library, you really feel the skylight. You get to feel the expanse of it, the lightness of it as you walk up to the library. Again, the concept of whether the skylight should be completely flat, completely horizontal, as most skylights are, or a little curved, that completely changed, because here, as you can see, it's completely vertical, and as you go up, it curves in to become a roof. This is the water collection pond. Just below the perforated wall. The bedrooms. So detailing such as having stone to do the arch and brickwork to do the rest of it, combining that with wood and a central piece of sandwich fabric. So these were things that we took quite some time over because we wanted to get it just right. And we did do a lot of exploring with that. So bathrooms, where we decided not to do traditional tiling, but instead we've got all these marbles that are in the wall. The pond again. Some of the external landscape elements. We wanted to make sure that the path led you directly to the house only and not cross over and go into some other part of the site. So it was a very gentle way of saying, please stay on the path and don't come out. This was a mount that was developed later after the house was built, that you can see here. Krishnagowda and his wife, Miss Renuka, in front of their lovely house. So this is as the house is today. You can see the heat extractor here that sits on top of the skylight. And our water storage is concealed within this structure. All the rainwater that comes from this roof gets collected on this site and is diverted to a rainwater collection pond. The traditional outside foyer where one can sit and enjoy the greenery around. So it was a very happy occasion for us when this building won the award for Ultratech Well-Built Residential Structure last year. It was a very proud moment for us. So I think this wraps up the journey that we had with this particular building.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Shruti, I think we had an amazing walk through that lovely house. Dyson sir is online. So,
sir is there.
Yeah, I'm giving in the mic.
Yes.
Hello, sir. Sir, your comments on that house, sir. It'd be great to hear from you.
Yeah. As I was saying, it was a very fascinating challenge because when we walked in first into that place, it was just a beautiful field. And he showed me some site and said, "This is where you're looking." I said, "No, the land doesn't speak that way." So he said, "What do you think?" He had lots of other processes and things. His wife smiled. He initially wanted a congregation place for his party and various things. Then Shruti and another person, Anupama, came with me. I don't know. We were a small group which were hanging around, walking around the place in the beginning. I love going to villages because afterwards the lunch and dinner is usually good. So I said, agreed, let me do that work. And then they look after me well. Unlike urban fellows, we're only rushing into chat, eat places. This took a process. Then I said, nature has to create. You people have been building in villages without any sensitivity. You just come to the urban area, see some buildings, and then say, repeat this. That became a very good challenge to me. I said, you go around whatever projects you like of us, what you think, and come back and see the sensitivity. I could then understand he loved our organic projects rather than the very defined projects. That became a big plus point. Because he said, I've never seen anything like this. I said, that's how you naturally should live in the village. So that became an acceptance. And then put Shruti on the head and said, now you start working on those. And then to tell them that structure, which is not straight, but curved and linear, is much stronger. And that's why the roof also, she hasn't said that particular. Moment you make those things in fact, I took them to the restaurant where they make that kodubu and all this. I said, why do you turn it? He said, to make the whole thing contain the thing. I said, exactly what you're doing in the restaurant is what we're going to do on the roof. You're going to twist it so it becomes 10 times stronger. So he understood it just like that, and it became a big plus point. Then when we moved inside, I said, why do you want, in fact, his mason and all were waiting to plaster and all. I said, nothing, all of you get out. No more plastering, no more painting. I love that way, but Shruti made sure all the lines and things are fairly neat and clean and decent. Got everything executing this. That was a very big process. It's not a small thing. And then the foundation is a floating foundation. This we did first in the Bangalore hospital. That was the first big building which I challenged every structural engineer in the country, the top one, unwalled over. They said, I loved that way when they agreed and said, we don't need piles of the dirtiest way of building. Just now there is a structural conference going on. They're expecting me there. I said, I'm not coming for you there. I'm going to be here with our guys and this going on. Then when we floated it, we found like a ship, we said. One thing you should know how to balance the ship. If you push it all on the load on one side, it will sink. put it on the right side, left side, it'll sink again. The loading factor becomes very interesting, and then it's like a small ship. It comes, then you can build. Then, as you build the movements, he understood the movement so well, and he gave us the freedom to do. That was a very big plus point. Nothing conventional. I said, and somebody said, no, but somebody asked a very question about how do we do these things. But all of, Jason, how it is, almost 99% of our projects are different from the normal one. There's no Prem and other lots are discussing it. Delhi something. I said, no, I have nothing to discuss with council or this. I was feeling some of them are hearing this fun talk also going on at that point. The point is the client a challenge? Is the site a challenge? And are we willing to take the challenge and adventure? Because the materials and senses and the elements then fuse together and give us this is the person and it moves. And a building can never, as somebody said, I said that very nicely also, architecture can never be sent in drawings completely. It has to be followed up and evolved. Only then you get some really fascinating architecture. Unfortunately, too many of the pre-stressed and precast concretes are running in town without any idea of how to use them. The technology is overtaking art, and art is simply submerging. In the old days, art was overtaking. Now, I hope after that COVID, you get a COVID on the existing architecture, and we get something else that happens. In the new virus of greatness comes in an architectural expression. I feel very strongly that can happen. Exploring the environment is a very thing. I'm glad youngsters like Shruti and all are taking trade upon all these all these things. Mukta should lead all these people. You youngsters should take over and get a new school breed going up to the forget about council registration. I'll make Habib sign everything. That's not a problem. He also loves it. Sir, come take challenges. I agree with him, and over I will pick papers done properly. I'm not worried about that question. The question is, can we change the schools of architecture? They are the worst criminals at the moment. Very few schools are creative. In fact, zero schools. I don't want to name any of them. The top schools are the worst in India. You should join a school where nobody goes, where nobody is there. And then you teach yourself. You just need a place to discipline yourself. That's what architecture is. It is not something like physics or chemistry or mathematics, where everything is set. Even mathematics is more abstract. We should, even art is definitive. It depends a lot on the tools. Architecture is not. Architecture is an exploration with very, very defined disciplines. And you don't do it finally. Somebody else does everything. That's the biggest challenge. You just watch and smile and create it. I'm glad this project, great man, has allowed us to, the great Gowda has allowed us to run his horses. I hope he enjoys living in it and whatever in it. Go ahead with anything. Let me know.
Right, sir. I mean, you've already triggered off what the vision for Humphrey Center of Design is. Right? Great having you online today and sharing your thoughts.
Let my mic work one day.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We shall have to.
All right, sir. Thank you off the phone, sir.
Okay, ma. Take care.
Sir.
Have a great time.
Yes,
wonderful.
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you. Great, guys. I think we had a wonderful session. Thanks, Shruti. Thank you, Jaisim sir.
Thank you, Jason, sir. Thank you so much.
Journey.